Okay, my friends, it is Monday, October 28th, 2024, and here are five big stories to pay attention to. So the first one's kind of scary. The Ukraine Security Service claims to have detained a 34-year-old volunteer for the UN World Food Program in Ukraine's Donetsk Oblast on suspicion of gathering intelligence for Russia's Federal Security Service. So if it's going on here, it could be going on anywhere, and this is all bad. The man used his humanitarian aid delivery routes to gather intelligence about Ukrainian infantry and artillery positions near Pokrovsk. Okay, so that's what we know here. Here's the actual article in Euromaidan Press. A little bit more. Since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, Russian agents have been particularly active with their operations, including espionage, sabotage, and assassination attempts. And again, he uses humanitarian aid routes to gather intelligence. He then transferred the gathered data via messenger to his Russian handler, who has been identified as an SFB officer. So they call it the guy, but how many other guys are out there doing something similar? I mean, it's pretty easy to blend in between Russia and Ukraine. Okay, big story number two. We could have a second peace summit in India, and Prime Minister Modi could organize a summit, says Zelensky. Now, this is important. Modi's no friend of Ukraine, but they're not exactly a friend of Russia either. They're willing to take Russia's oil cheaply, and they have some ties to Russia. But what Modi wants more than anything else is to raise the profile of India. Erdogan does the same thing with Turkey, but India is the most populous nation on earth. They want to sit at the big table, and this could help raise their stature. And Modi, being the one to broker the deal, if he could, it would look really good for him. President Zelensky addressed India in asking for help to force Russia to end the war. He also called on G20 countries to put financial pressure on Russia. PM Modi can influence, this is Zelensky speaking, PM Modi can influence the end of a war. It's the great value of India, of 1.5 billion people, which has real impact on this, real influence, blocking the Russian economy, blocking cheap energy, blocking the work of military-industrial complex, and so on, will lead to a lesser ability of Russia to fight. Next, as for the G20, that's why the G20 is the G20. These are the main economies of the world. All wars depend on food for war and its economy. It's exclusively money, it's financial resources and people. 20 large economies can easily, I'm sure, put Putin in his place. It may not stimulate the end of the war, but rather slow down all his desires. Okay, and so if something comes out of it, maybe something can come out of it. We just don't know exactly what will happen or whether Modi will be willing to pick up on that kind of desire to be a broker. Okay, let's shift our attention to the third big story. This is North Korea. So I just watched a video where Mark Rutte, the NATO Secretary General, just came out and said, see, we know North Korea has done this. They've sent these troops. Russia is getting these troops and this armament. North Korea is getting this war technology that's banned by the UN. Okay, well, you know that. There was nothing really new there, but he's saying it. While Ukraine's Western partners remain paralyzed by fear of escalation, Russia is about to dramatically escalate its invasion and send thousands of North Korean soldiers into battle. The only red line that should matter to the international community is the border of Ukraine. Hey, that's spot on. This is the only red line that should actually matter. So North Korea sends inexperienced soldiers to Russia for war against Ukraine. This is according to the Wall Street Journal this morning. North Korean military, which is only in the initial stages of service, lacks the necessary physical training and combat experience outside of their country. Okay. Again, this is Noel reports North Korean troops are approaching Russia, Ukraine front lines, though reports suggest that they're not Kim Jong-un's elite forces. Now, we've heard a lot that they're sending special forces or something along those lines. This is not what they're sending, according to the Wall Street Journal. Intelligence shows many soldiers are young, likely malnourished, inexperienced, and trained for mountainous terrain rather than Ukraine's plains. We're going to be fighting differently in Ukraine or in Kursk. Estimates indicate around 3,000 North Korean soldiers have arrived in Russia this month. So 3,000, how much? I mean, that's not good. It's a second nation involved. But 3,000, today there were 1,680 Russian casualties on the battlefield. So that's about now. On top of that, nearly 200 former North Korean soldiers who defected to South Korea are seeking relocation to Ukraine to launch a psychological warfare campaign against their former comrades, according to the South China Morning Post. With 7 to 10 years of military experience, they aim to use their insider knowledge to undermine and demoralize North Korean troops that may fight against Ukraine. Interesting. Okay, now here's the Institute for the Study of War explaining what kind of hole Putin's in. Putin very likely assesses that calling another partial mobilization wave or introducing general mobilization will be too costly to his regime, and has therefore resorted to crypto mobilization efforts that appear to be placing greater and greater strains on the Russian wartime economy. Frankly, what Putin should be doing is using North Koreans in factories rather than sending them to the front lines. He could do that. It would be quieter. It wouldn't create the international outrage, but I don't actually want him to listen to me. Okay, the Washington Post reported on October 27th that the Russian economy is in danger of overheating, noting that Russia's excessively high military spending has fueled economic growth in a way that has forced Russian companies to artificially raise their salaries in order to fulfill labor demands. So salaries have actually gone up significantly since the war began in Russia, and you would think, wow, that's great, their salaries are going up, but inflation has gone up even faster, and so that presents a problem. And so you just got to there's an arms race between inflation and salaries, and that's going to bankrupt them eventually if they are not careful. Okay, the Washington Post quoted Russian central bank head who warned in July of 2024 that Russia's labor force and production capacity are almost exhausted. Well, that's good news, but they're not finished yet. They're going to keep going, and they're going to go until they break or until they win, is the way that they're going to be thinking about this, and they're not willing to just capitulate anytime soon. The Post noted that private Russian companies are struggling to keep up with Russian military salaries and are increasingly having to offer wages several times higher than the typical industry averages. So people are being bribed into military service, and that's why we have the 600,000 plus casualties, because they can keep drawing people in for higher salary. Look, if you're making 4 times the wage that you could otherwise make, and your family's going to be taken care of with your death benefit, it's potential that you might do that if you're from some of the more impoverished areas, which underscores the fact that Russia does not have an indefinite pool of manpower and must financially and socially recognize with the ever-growing cost of replenishment its frontline losses via various forced generation avenues, like North Koreans. Okay, so the Washington Post also notes that Russia's stringent migration policies, particularly after the March 2024 Crocus City Hall attack, have further depleted Russia's labor pool and amplified economic friction. This has particularly become the case as migrant workers are increasingly identifying Russia as a hostile and unattractive place to relocate for work. They don't want to go there because, like the Indians, like the Sri Lankans, like some Africans, some Cubans have been told, come here, you're going to have these safe factory jobs, or you're going to do this educational experience, and then they're sent off to the front lines. So they don't want to do that. The ISW has reported at length on the balance that Putin is trying to strike between catering to his pro-war, ultranationalist constituency, which espouses extreme anti-migrant sentiments, and his practical need to leverage migrant labor, both economically and militarily. So he's in kind of a bind. The recent appearance of North Korean troops in Russia and their reported deployment to the combat zone in Kursk Oblast further suggests that Putin's entire force generation system is very tenuous. It really is. So that's where Putin is. That's the kind of bind that he's in. Okay, let's look at some international political news. This is big story number 4. In Lithuania, the Social Democrats have won the second round of parliamentary elections because there are elections going on all over the place. 'Tis the season, right? So if you're a Lithuanian, can you tell me what's going on? By the way, labas to my Lithuanian friends. According to Delphi, the opposition Social Democrat Party wins 52 out of 141 seats in the Seimas. The Seimas is their parliament building. It's like the Verkhovna Rada, same kind of thing for the Lithuanians. While the ruling Union of Fatherland Christian Democrats of Lithuania wins only 28 seats. So again, Lithuanians, if you can put in the comments below what that will mean for the war moving forward, I would really like to know. Thank you. Okay, last little bit here. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban is set to visit Georgia today. During the visit, Orban will meet with the Georgian Prime Minister, whose Russian government is accused of election fraud. Hey, this is in Politico. They're talking about this like for real. He's going there and he's going there while he's the head of the Council of Europe, but it's not really, he's not doing it as officially as the head of the Council of Europe, but it looks like it is. Okay. Orban was ahead of the game, though, congratulating the Prime Minister and the Georgian Dream Party on their overwhelming victory on Saturday before the election results had even been published. Well, I guess if you know, you know, right? The people of Georgia know what's best for their country and made their voice heard today. Well, kind of. A senior Hungarian official confirmed to Politico late on Sunday that the trip would go ahead and that the official visit was organized by at Georgia's request. The visit will again highlight the stark differences in foreign policy between Orban's Hungary, which holds the rotating 6-month presidency of the Council of Europe, and the others in the bloc. Okay, now here's what's important. As head of the council, he clearly does not represent the EU in dealings with the outside world. That's the place for Joseph Borrell or whoever is in charge of diplomatic whatever. He just is part of this rotating council and he's now in the chair. But it looks like he's giving more credence to it from the EU than should be. Okay, this morning I put out this second video on deterrence. I put one out just a few days ago, and here's a second one. And it works like this. And I explain, and I have a little bit from Anders Puck Nielsen talking about how deterrence works from a video he did a couple years ago. I think I was inspired by this, and I just thought this was an extraordinary video. These two dogs are just backing up this bear. That's what deterrence is supposed to be, and that's what we're not doing in the West. All right, my friends, that's all that I have right now. Thank you for the time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes. Thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.